Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the October 23rd, 2012 meeting of the Easthampton School Committee. We will start with some announcements. First, I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded by Easthampton Public Access Cable. Nancy, would you do the other announcements for us, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
The next school committee meetings are November 13th and 27th and December 11th. There are half days of school on Thursday and Friday, October 25th and 26th, due to parent-teacher conferences. There's a half day of school on Friday, November 2nd, due to Teacher Professional Development Day. There is no school on Tuesday, November 6th, due to Election Day. There is no school on Monday, November 12th, due to Veterans Day. There's a half day of school on Wednesday, November 21st, and no school on Thursday and Friday, November 22nd and 23rd, due to Thanksgiving break. There is no school December 24th through January 1st due to winter break. School will reopen on Wednesday, January 3rd, 2013.
Wow, quick year.
It is a quick year, isn't it?
The school committee would like to thank Tim for his work in helping tape this evening's production. Easthampton Public Access Cable Stations, channels 5, 19, and 20, always looking for volunteers to help with the taping of meetings. If anyone is interested in helping to tape city government meetings, please contact Kathy at 413-203-1360. Okay, so next, correspondence.
Just one invitation from our legal representatives inviting us to a reception they are hosting at the MASC annual conference in conjunction with the MASS, which is the Mass Association of School Superintendents. Just asking us if we'd like to join them at the reception if we're attending that conference.
And that's certainly less than $50 limit. That's the legal limit for gifts to individual elected or public employees.
Right.
Correct.
Though I'm not sure, given the timing and the location. I think a lot of us are going to be busy with events here in the city, correct? Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
This is, yep. Other?
That's it.
That, correct. Sorry, I'm sliding forward to gifts. We'll accept a motion and like these
Chairman, I
read.
would vote to move to the school committee to vote to accept with gratitude and appreciation gift from Fleury Lumber Company for the donation of lumber valued at $300 for the Center Pepin School Garden Project. Antonio's Pizza, and the principal was just having some here before the meeting, and it certainly smelled very good, for the donation of pizza during the Center Pepin School Garden Volunteer Day. And also the Helping Hand Society for the donation of a storage shed, value at this point unknown, for the Center Pepin Playground.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to thank all of those folks for the gifts. The Helping Hand Society, Antonio's, and Fleury Lumber. It's terrific to have businesses and organizations helping us out. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda at this stage? I didn't think so.
Let's not rush off, folks.
I just want to remind folks, I think I've sent a note to everyone on the school committee, and I think at least a couple of the school officials know that the students at Easthampton High School will begin the process of defending their state championship in the We the People program by participating in a showcase that we're actually co-sponsoring. It'll be held at Williston in the Reed Center on Wednesday, November 7th, the day after the election. I know that the City Council and the Mayor will be otherwise occupied that night, though they probably would prefer to be helping the students out to some of the tasks that
I certainly would.
they'll be handling. But certainly it's an opportunity for anyone to come and to help. We can use as many people lending their assistance that evening as possible, and you can get in touch either with Kelly Brown at the high school or with me, and we'd be delighted to have folks come and join us that evening. We're looking forward to a great civic discussion about a whole range of matters, and thanks to those of you who've already responded and said that you're willing to lend a hand. That'll be great. Thank you. So for discussion, subcommittee reports, we'll start with the subcommittee, finance subcommittee. Some
So our
important ones.
subcommittee report is in your package. We met on October 11th. Just to give you some of the highlights, and if you have any questions, food services, one of the items just to make you aware of is that food services program is going to need a replacement van very soon. Their truck is ready to die and probably will not pass inspection, so that's going to happen. Andy did inform us that there's a $27,000 cost to the district due to a special education student moving into our district that had to be placed in a out-of-district placement. So that's an additional cost we learned about. And we actually saw some information from Nancy and Andy regarding the fiscal 2014 budget numbers and saw how very bleak that they could possibly be. So we had a discussion regarding that. And Nancy actually has a correction to my minutes.
I do. It's in the minutes. It says that Nancy stated that there was not a good response to return them. This is about the free and reduced lunch forms. It really was that there wasn't a significant increase over last year's response. There was an increase, but it was not significant. Maybe this is the right time to share also that when we talked about the preliminary FY14 budget, the work that we've done with the finance subcommittee meeting, Andy, in working up the numbers for us, has let me know that with level services, just having the exact same program services and personnel we have this year, with the money that we can expect from the state and thereby from the city and our revenues, it appears that we will have up to a $900,000 budget gap at this point in time. And that is frightening to all of us. So share that with you now.
Other comments or?
I just have a
Questions?
question. Do you
Yes.
have any idea what a new van will cost for the food services?
We're looking
rough
at
estimate.
actually at pre-owned, used vans, trucks. We're trying to find something that's as inexpensive as possible. Chartwells, we're in negotiations with Chartwells to help us with the cost of this vehicle. But no, I can't tell you an exact amount. I don't know if you can, Mike, if you've had any conversations with them.
Not really.
So we're looking in all places possible for a very modestly priced vehicle.
Right, and this is a vehicle that's largely used to move food and related supplies between the buildings
That's right.
during the course of the day.
That's right.
And it's a step van, not a conventional,
Right.
van off the lot. It's a
Right.
box type.
It's got a box on the back. People have probably seen it in town. It's a familiar vehicle. We've had it for a long time. Other questions regarding this? I'll add a comment as well. I think that response to the felt need, here we've used a vehicle well through its life and probably, as you say, nearing the end of its viable usage. I think that speaks to the way that the Easthampton schools do take good care of their finances and live within their means. I know that's become a popular phrase in town, and I want to remind folks that the numbers that the superintendent has shared with you in the finance subcommittee would be the third year in a row where we've had a budget gap that has meant that we have not had the funds sufficient to maintain level services. So to the folks in the community who are concerned that the Easthampton schools aren't learning how to live within their means, you're actually right. We're learning how to live within less than our means, and we're getting really good at that. I think since that topic has come up a couple of times in discussion in relation to the budget and to the ongoing consideration of question 4 on the upcoming ballot, it's important for those who are concerned about our ability to live within our means. I think there's evidence there that as the city does, as the mayor and the city council do every year because of the difficult challenges that we face, the school committee and the school department do an outstanding job of living within their means because they have less to live with than is necessary to provide the same level of services that they provided the year before. And this will be 3 years running. And that is a trend that I think is a harbinger of no good news for the school children in the community. And our job is to advocate for those school children. And that's why we advocated for putting before the voters, first before the city council and then before the voters, a budget override. Because the people who pay the price for the budget gap year after year ultimately are the young people in the community, and we do an excellent job in the school department of managing the resources that are available. The time is now to address whether that the amount of those resources is sufficient going forward. And that's really the question that's at the heart of question 4. So this report from the subcommittee speaks to that, and I think it's worth emphasis. Thanks. Policy review.
We have not met. Nothing to report.
Thank you. Lori, back to you.
No update to
That leaves
CES.
a lot of time. We've just cleared up a whole lot of time for you, Bailey.
Okay, some events coming up at the high school is the dog show, which is Saturday, October 27th from 12 to 2 at Nashwanek Park. The annual haunted house at EHS is October 27th as well, starting at 5 p.m. for the younger kids. The homecoming dance is also that evening. Spirit Week will be next week for the high schoolers, so we get to dress up in all kinds of crazy outfits and earn spirit points. And in the next few weeks in the student council meetings, we're going to be talking about school-wide issues such as the dress code, because that's concerning a lot of students this year.
The dress code, Principal Brown, what do you think? That's a good topic for the students to pick up.
Fantastic.
Yes, it is. Does your Spirit Week include a different theme each day, or is there a theme for the week? Can you give us
It's a
an
different
example?
theme each day. Like one day will be Halloween, where it'll probably actually be on Halloween this year, where everyone will come dressed in their costumes. I believe another day that we're doing is a Greek mythological day in honor of Miss Griggs.
Excellent.
And everyone can come dressed like a Greek mythological character, and the
It's great.
homeroom teachers will make a check mark or tally up how many kids in each homeroom, and the class with the most amount of spirit points by the end of the year has a picnic.
Very nice.
That sounds like it'll be highly educational, so people actually can try to figure out which classical figure or that you're dressed
Yep.
up as. Great. You're ready to go? You're going to be in there leading the charge?
I'm gonna try.
You're going to try. That's great. That's great. Thank you very much.
Could I add to,
Please.
maybe to honor Bailey here, as I was talking to her before, and I see we have a poster out there. I don't know if you're all aware that Bailey's in the Distinguished Young Woman event coming in November, so as the weeks go on, we can just chat with her and see how everything's going, but to give her the encouragement and everything.
And I think I heard November 18th, that's when the
Yes.
big evening is.
Yep.
Great.
Very exciting. I know some of us will be there.
Good, good.
Thank you, Lori. Bailey, you shouldn't be so modest. You got to talk about these great things that you're up to. Although maybe modesty is one of the distinguishing. Okay, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Peter. I wanted to give you an update on the labor relations negotiator services interview process. We had 3 candidates for the position of Jim Connors, who's retiring as of the end of October. One candidate had to withdraw because he determined that his current schedule was really too full to take on another client. So that left us with 2 candidates. We interviewed one of the candidates yesterday at 4:30. I and Nancy Sykes and who else?
Lori.
Lori.
Right?
Lori is with me, right. I've been in so many meetings lately, I can't remember who I've been with. I was in each meeting. And so we had a very good interview, and we have our next interview on Friday morning. And then we hope to make our decision immediately after that and notify the candidate who's been accepted by us for the position by Monday. So,
Terrific.
looks good.
Who stepped out?
Mr. Mitnick. Okay. So
Student
that,
enrollment.
any other questions about that, by the way?
Our thanks to Nancy and Lori and Superintendent Posey for helping out with that.
Okay, student enrollment data. The school committee asked last time when I presented enrollment data if they could get an update on the lowering of numbers at the middle school. That's where we had 14 fewer students than last year. So I asked Principal Rebello to give me some information, and you have that in a memo form. She reported to me that 32 students actually left our school between last year and this year, but 25 new students were enrolled this year. So technically our enrollment has only changed by 7. Of the 32 students who left, 20 moved out of district, 7 were school of choice, 5 went to Hampshire Regional in grade 7, and 2 to Amherst. 2 went to charter schools, both to Pioneer Valley Performing Arts. And we did get a choice survey response back from the parent of, I believe it was one of those students, saying that she was very happy with Whitebrook Middle School, but it was simply that her daughter wanted to pursue a career in the arts, and that this felt like the best placement for her. 2 went to private schools, and 1 to Virtual Academy. Any questions? Okay. So the next on the agenda is our school improvement goals and program improvement goals. So I have 4 of my administrators here this evening to present their goals to you, and you have those in your packet. We're going to start with Dr. Perrone and the goals for the high school. Dr. Perrone.
Good evening. The process that we took starting in June to develop these goals was challenging, and we worked together, we collaborated, we went through a draft process, and finally sat down with the superintendent and formalized the goals. What you see is a few months of work, and grew from our analysis of data this summer. The data of the last year and previous years, so that we're trying to create goals that aren't just created because we're supposed to create them, but because they are viable and are going to move us in a positive direction. The 3 school improvement goals that the high school is focused on are thematically based on assessment, college career readiness, and alignment of curriculum. Those 3 goals fall under the umbrella of the district goals, which were set by the superintendent. And what we tried to do is create these tiers of umbrellas where the district goals cover all the sites, and then within the sites, our goals are covering over the teachers and what's going on in each of the classrooms, so that there's consistency and cohesiveness between the goals horizontally at the site level and then vertically from elementary school to the superintendent's office. Assessment was a focus for us because that's really where the rubber meets the road in the classroom. And formative assessment, that formal and informal piece to determining what's going on in the classroom, is where a teacher really finds traction with students, and students find traction with themselves with respect to the objectives that are set for learning. So the focus of that first goal, by June of 13, all teachers will use a variety of formal and informal methods to measure student growth and learning in order to adjust instruction and meet student needs. That is really what it's all about when you talk about assessment. I don't know how in-depth you want to go. I know you all had an opportunity to look at this, so I'm just going to stop there for the first and move to college and career readiness. College and career readiness for the high school is our preeminent responsibility, and making sure that those students who come through Easthampton High School are prepared for whatever they choose to pursue after high school. Again, data was what drove us there, and our goal is to increase 4-year cohort graduation rate from 74.4 to 77.4% by August of 13. The key actions that fall under that plan focus somewhat on senior activities, but really trickle down all the way to freshman activities and center on the guidance department and the work that our guidance counselors do with our students as they enter the high school, move through our curriculum, and prepare themselves for college and career. The third goal is the alignment of curriculum. One of the mandates that has come down to us is to align our classes, our courses, our curriculum with Common Core state standards. And we are taking this very seriously. This is not just an exercise of a creation of a document that's going to be shelved and collect dust. This is going to be a living document that is aligned with the Common Core, that drives everything we do in the classroom, and that benefits every student that walks into Easthampton High School. I don't know if there are any specific questions that anyone has on assessment, on college career readiness, or alignment of curriculum, but I would entertain any that you do have.
And Dr. Prono, you're going to speak at least briefly about your student learning goal?
I will, yes. I have that. I
Did
just
you
left
want to
that
wait and do questions on
Yep.
that first? I just wanted to comment, because I know the school committee was interested in having the guidance department at the
Yes.
high school come and do a presentation, and I believe they're lined up for our next school committee meeting in November.
I don't remember if it was early November or, what are the dates?
We have a date set with them, and
Yeah,
to come
and
in.
that was something that they were very eager to do, because they want to share what's happening at the high school, because now this is their third year as a team with our students. Now granted, because of budget cuts, we did lose our transition counselor, but Ms. Davidson is down at the middle school, so there's still that collaboration. And through the Race to the Top grant, we are working to implement the mass model of counseling in our schools and help our 8th graders transition to the 9th grade, and then really present a coherent program throughout high school for our students with guidance. And it's not just, guidance counselor A sees Jimmy and then sees Susie and sees Annie. We try to present programming and courses and class work to students. We bring parents in for financial aid nights, etc. So we're really trying to have a program, and they want to share that program with you. It's just beginning of the year is pretty challenging for them with getting going on senior activities, etc. So they found a date that works, and I believe they are ready to go.
It's one of our November dates.
Yes.
Yeah.
So any questions? Yes.
And I apologize if I'm not understanding this college career readiness.
Mhm.
So this is, that 74% to 77.4% is kids after graduation going to college for 4-year college? I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. No, you're looking at graduation rate.
You're looking at graduation rates.
You're looking at graduation rate there. So the graduation rate is at 74.4%.
Our high school graduation rate?
From freshman to the.
The
Right,
four-year
for the
cohort
four-year
rate.
cohort. By the time you look at 100 students starting in 9th grade, that's the percentage of those who will graduate. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah.
Wow, sorry, because I guess I didn't know it was that low.
74.4?
Mhm.
Yes,
Okay.
I don't recall ever seeing that number that low.
Well, what the state also looks at the 5-year rate, because
Yeah.
the 4-year cohort rate is that group of students that comes in and stays all the way through. The 5-year rate is the group of students that comes in plus any that transfer in. So the 4-year rate is any that transfer out or leave the state or anything like that. So they look at those two rates,
So
the
you're,
4-year rate and then the 5-year rate.
so the 4-year rate means that they didn't necessarily just not graduate, they might have just moved somewhere else?
They could very well have,
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
all right.
But
So
we
What is
do,
that number?
what's that?
I strike through that number is not very good for anything.
No, it's not.
No, it's not what we
No,
wanted to see.
No.
Well, but you're saying analytically, it's not as helpful.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Because of
Analytically,
all
it's
the
not very
factors
helpful
that- right.
because if a student, of these students that left in your earlier report, if any of those were high school students, they would become non-graduates because they went to another school.
Yeah.
And they would be counted by another school as their 5-year
Five-year.
cohort rate. That's right.
So it doesn't really mean an awful lot.
Well, it does mean something, but then when you look at that in connection with the dropout rate, and then it means more, because now you're looking at a percentage of students from a class that didn't finish, that left the school.
And that's what concerned you, is at first glance, it looks like, oh, 100 minus that must be the dropout rate. But that's not the
Or
whole,
25 kids simply failed to graduate.
Right.
so-
Right.
For whatever reason,
Right.
but that's not what it means.
Right.
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 And
They
that's what,
could,
you know,
they
what-
could be graduating school somewhere else in the valley.
Hampshire Regional,
You got it.
Amherst,
So how does that help us
Northampton.
What help us?
to know this number?
Well, this is one of the numbers that the state uses to look at our, to calculate our PPI, our performance index. So that's one of those things that if we improve that, that's gonna give us a bump in the PPI. If we lower the dropout rate, that will give us a bump in PPI.
Right.
So
But we
those-
can't really control who's leaving for whatever, so,
True, but we can control the students that stay with us for 4 years
Yes.
yeah.
and make sure that we're doing everything we can so that those students don't drop out
So I was gonna ask
And
that
graduate after
three,
4 years.
and graduate after, graduate
so
after 4
that
years.
3% increase, is it safe to say that that's really kind of the students that you're working on that stay, that you don't want them to drop out, you want them to finish in 4 years? That's what that 3% is that you're working on, is that safe to
True,
say?
and what we're really looking at is some of these students become, after freshman year, they're not with their cohort anymore. So if I come in the same class as the mayor, and the mayor is credit on target, and I'm not, I become a 9R. And when I become a 9R, then it's less likely that I'm gonna graduate with the mayor, even though I started that cohort. So the 5-year, we recouped some students in the 5-year, so that students that should have graduated in 11 graduated last year in 12. See, so we're really trying to do what we can to hold on to students, keep them in the building, and then work with interventions to get them to graduate within 5 years. When they have that diploma, then they have something that they can bring to a community college or wherever they wanted to apply themselves after.
And we're also trying to get them to stay in and graduate in 4 years. That
Of
would
course,
be-
yeah, that's the
number one
ultimate goal, and that's what all the programs that the guidance counselors are implementing and working with parents and students to accomplish.
Do you have the data over time? It might be helpful to look at, right, I apologize. I think that perhaps.
Do I don't have it here,
No,
I'm
no,
sorry,
I didn't
yeah.
mean tonight.
Yeah.
I think that what might help with our curiosity, or maybe just mine, is to see trends and to look at how the implementation of the programs that are underway, which clearly, given the fact that it's a rolling 4-year sequence, it would take time for them to have a measurable effect. I think that would be useful. Yeah, because the number at first looks, it's a sobering number regardless, but it can mean some things that shouldn't. Some of the percentage of some of these 25% are not folks we should be worried about, in the sense that they're not off being well educated and well prepared for the rest of their lives. It's just not happening here.
Right.
So I think, why don't we include that in that the presentation that guidance is going to give us, and have a part of it be about that, the trends over time and exactly how these numbers are calculated.
And could we look at just the dropout rate? Look at that
I could
separate from this?
I'm sorry, I could share with you that data over time. The state has tracked it back to 2009, I believe. Well, I'm just, in the PPI, they're looking at data. They're looking at data that I could certainly share with you. One of the things I would like to mention, because when we were talking before about budgets and the past and cuts being made, the cuts that are being made that are affecting our students are those not IEP students, but at-risk students,
Right.
those tier 2 interventions that are kids that are at risk because either they are a free and reduced lunch student, or they are, they're not IEP, but they're
having a struggle.
struggling
They're having a
because
struggle.
of what's happening at home.
Variety
They
of
don't have
reasons.
support that everybody else takes for granted, that my 4 kids take for granted. And so the interventions that we're unfortunately being obligated to cut are those interventions that target those students. So we have to find other measures, other interventions to meet their needs. And we're doing the best that we can to do that. But people have to realize that the cuts that are being made are cuts that are affecting those students that are most at risk. And those are the students that we need to hold on to for 5 years just to get them a diploma.
And I think it's important to understand too that we don't want to make the cuts in those areas, but those are the only places we can make the cuts, because those in some ways are supplemental services. We have to have the personnel in place to have the right number of courses, the right number of options, the right number, the student-teacher ratio. That's all has to be taken into consideration when we build the budget. And when we don't have enough resources, then these supplemental services for students who are struggling are some of the ones that have to go. And as I think we've mentioned before, we've continually had to take them away from the high school and the middle school and target them at the elementary schools, because that's where early intervention occurs, and that's will impact a student for the rest of his or her life if they aren't given those interventions. So we're still hanging on to those at this point.
And if you look at our data, excuse me, the elementary schools are the schools that are commendation schools, because that's where the resources and the interventions have been in the last 5 years. So when we now take resources and interventions and aim them at the middle school and the high school, we're going to gain traction and get results there. Perfect example is the MIMSI grant.
Right.
Perfect example, where you take teacher training, you take students, and you pour resources intelligently and rationally into that program. Look at the results we're getting.
For a wide range of students.
For a wide range of students.
In the
That's
past,
correct.
it was just the A students who were feeling that they could take AP, but this AP grant has helped give those opportunities to a wide range of students who wouldn't otherwise have had those.
That's
A great intervention, really. But it's grant funded,
That's
again.
right. Yes.
I just have a very simple question, Dr.
Yes.
Pearl. As you were going over these 3 areas and you went to number 2, college placement, readiness for college placement, was that number 2?
College career readiness.
Yes.
Yes.
As I understand it, the support for college career readiness is the graduation rate. Is that what you gave us as your support for whether we are college career readiness? It's 74 point, in other words, right now, I know we will hear more from the guidance presentation, but right now, your support for whether we are really college and career ready is simply our graduation rate.
I would say it's one of the measures.
Okay, I mean, that's the one you've given us tonight.
Right. Well, that's the measurable piece
Okay, all right,
for this.
all right. I just wanted to get that clear in my head. But we will hear more specifics about that.
Absolutely. This
And
is
I
just,
almost-
as he said, as Dr. Perlin said, I'm sorry for
That's right.
interrupting you. It's a measurable piece. We're
But
looking at
later
the data
we
that
will,
we can,
yeah.
yes.
And just to return to the PPI, there's things that are looked at that are measurable. 2 are specific to the high school: dropout rate and graduation rate. I chose one of those 2.
Right, and I'm not trying to pick, but Dr. Perrone, sometimes I want to hear, you're the principal of the high school.
Mhm.
Besides all of these statistics,
Mhm.
are our students ready for career and college? Can we in any way speak to that without statistics?
Sure we can. I get emails from students who have gone to college and say, hey, thank you for what you did. Thank you for, not you specifically, thank you what Easthampton High School has done for me. Thank you to that AP Calc class that now I'm here and I'm ready and I didn't have to repeat.
And I
AP
know
Cal.
that the world wants to hear statistics. The world doesn't want to hear informal
Yeah.
testimonies, but
Mhm.
sometimes I think that they are really important to us to hear that the graduation rate, or how many graduate in 4 years or how many graduate in 5 years, and all of that isn't enough to know whether our students are getting accepted to colleges or going into careers and that they are being successful. That's what we really want to hear.
And so I believe that that's going to be certainly a large portion
Right.
of the presentation.
And that's why I should shut up and wait.
Well, or save some other questions for that presentation.
You're
I
much
don't-
kinder.
I don't know that, I can't speak to what the presentation is going to encompass,
Well, I think that it sounds like that's something that we want to hear, and we do have information on that, on what colleges our students go
Right,
to,
right.
That's true.
what careers they go into.
And I think it's important too, and we've covered this before, what colleges our kids are accepted at.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times that list is a lot bigger than where they go because of
Right,
cost.
exactly, thank you.
That's right. And I think it would help to bring in some of that anecdotal information, because Dr. Perone shares with me often
know, and I
comments
know
from
you know it.
students. And,
But-
and from now on, I shall share them all with you. Send them
But
on.
the reality is, my evaluation, what I'm requested to do
Right.
is analyze data,
I
is to
know.
present data, and that data is the objectivity, if you will, on which we are judged.
I know, I'm sorry about that.
What?
It's all,
No need for you to
data driven,
apologize.
right? It's data driven. We hear that
It
phrase
is,
all the
it's
time.
data
Data-driven.
driven, it is.
And you know, I was sitting there thinking about this, and I wrote data on this because that is what we focused on this summer.
I know it, I know it.
And that's what the state is
I do
asking
know
us
that,
to focus
Nancy, I
on.
do know that.
But it seems, just, I know this probably isn't necessarily the right forum for this, but it certainly seems to me that all of this is driven by this fallacy about charter and choice and where those costs go. If we're judged by how many kids actually start and finish in our four-year high school, and we're being poached by other institutions because the state's encouraging that, and they're also taking the resources away, I mean, they're just building on top of that in an effort to have elite schools and failures, and nobody in the middle. And that's really just failed state policy.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Where do we fall? Do you have an idea in relation to other districts?
With?
With the cohort graduation rate?
We can get that
We
data.
can get the DART, I mean, there's
Yeah.
DART data on that.
Which is data for schools that are comparable to ours, so we can have that as part of the,
Okay.
but Mike, you certainly do make a good point that we're being penalized
Once
all
again.
along the way.
And when you look at the PPI, there's always a target that has been established, and we are, we compare to the target. And then there's certainly measures that we can compare to others based on, the same size, same demographic, et cetera.
So we'll give you an in-depth presentation in that
All right.
next session.
I promise I'll wait patiently.
Excellent.
I was just wondering too, to what extent, having just recently voted to change the passing grade at the high school from 65 to 60, to what extent does that play into our ability to increase these rates? I mean, is that a key factor?
Well, it's certainly going
Increasing.
to immediately impact the percentage of failures within a class. I found in the data that I looked at that there's more failures early on in the ninth grade. When you look at an introductory and algebra class, there's more failures at the lower grades than the higher grades. But I don't know that. I don't know what that's going to do. I think it's fair because if you look at A's, an A is 90 to 100, right? That's an A. So why should a D be 65 to 70 or 69? It doesn't make sense that if we really want to look at rigor, then let's make our A's 95 to 100.
Yeah, I
I was
agree
just
with
wondering
you.
to what extent, like if you had any piece of your estimates here or your goals to say, okay, I think the fact that we've changed this rate will impact us in these scores.
Yeah, no,
That's
I don't have that
We
data.
believe it'll have a positive impact, but we
For
don't
sure.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. We just did it.
Percentage-wise, we
I
just
don't know
put it
what
into
it's going to do.
place. Right.
I mean, I know it's going to decrease the rate, at least initially. I don't know what it's going to do over time.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dr. Roan. I personally do not talk about lowering the passing rate. What to me we have done is even out the grading scale. We haven't lowered the passing rate. We have simply made the grading scale balanced and fair.
Equitable. Because who is being most affected by that 65? The at-risk student. And that's not fair.
No.
Those students have enough challenges that face them outside of school to come in and then say, okay, in order to pass, you got to hit 65. So we made it equitable. I would agree.
So
And with other school districts as well.
That's
And with
right.
other school districts.
to summarize in terms of providing information for the people in the community, Dan, while we can't yet, until we change the folks who make the rules that Mike has pointed out and the flaws that exist in the system, the one difference that is within the power of the city of Easthampton and the voters in Easthampton to do is to provide the resources necessary to serve those kids who are at risk but don't qualify for a 504 or an IEP where we're automatically mandated to spend the money. Like the
Correct.
$27,000 item that just floated through the subcommittee on finance report. Andy's not here to walk through the mechanics of how much of that money ever comes back to the district. Because again, that's a child who arrives in the district, spends no time in our school, is placed out, and we fund that. Because again, of the way the state has structured the financing of public education. The one piece we control is whether or not we'll have the resources to assist those students who are at risk. And that's part of the question that's before the voters on November 4th.
Correct, and I think the district has proven through the resource allocation aimed at the elementary school that when we take resources and place them somewhere, they are effectively used. Look at the data
Level one,
in the
level one,
elementary school.
level one.
That's correct. So now we need to look at distribution vertically and make sure that the middle school and the high school is intelligently using resources that are made available to them to affect change within the buildings.
Super. Other questions or comments? I think we're set.
I would think so, but the superintendent asked that I look at my student learning goal.
Student learning goals, that's,
You might want to just give a brief overview of that.
Brief
because I
overview.
think it's obvious, you'll see that it's captured in your school improvement goals as well.
True. I'm going to
They're
read the
interrelated.
statement. By September of 13, EHS will decrease CPI, Composite Performance Index gaps 5% in high needs groups in math, ELA, and bio by moving all students up that MCAS performance level continuum. So what we're really talking about is we look at failure warning, needs improvement, proficient, and advanced. We want to move all our students up that continuum. And by so doing, we would decrease, the performance gaps that we have in our high needs groups, which is ELL, IEP, and free and reduced lunch students, low income.
And ultimately increase our PPI points.
And ultimately increase our PPI points, that's correct.
Yes. It's all about the points. Okay, any other questions? Thank
it's
you.
all about
Dr.
I
algorithms.
applaud you.
It's all about algorithms, right, Nancy?
Yeah.
If you can put it into a good algorithm, then.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to excuse myself. We have senior night for the boys soccer team, so I'm going to head over there.
All
By
right.
all means.
Lucky you.
I bet you they're gonna have pizza. More good pizza.
And what do we get?
Thank you, Dr.
Data, we
Eternal
get data.
thanks.
More
They get pizza, we
PPIs
get
or
data.
something.
PPIs, yeah.
Right,
And you're going to hear more about this because next we have our program improvement goals. And we're going to ask our district curriculum director, Shirley Gilfeather, to come and give her presentation.
You must be internally tired of us.
Well, listen, I was sitting back there looking at your eyes during the part that he was talking about PPI and CPI. And I wanted to see if there was that vision of knowingness coming from you, as opposed to that deer in the headlight thing that we had when we started the last time.
And you
I was
got the
here, so-
vision of knowing
Yeah,
this,
see?
right?
It's
Right.
a
Well,
no.
again, it doesn't help to use acronyms that have been out there in the popular vernacular anyway. I mean, people think of CPI, it's related to inflation. It's not related to the academic performance of students, so.
So how'd we do, Shirley?
I thought you did wonderfully. I mean, I didn't see
Alright.
that what is he talking about thing, and I'm with Nancy all the way in terms of talking about the idea of numbers, and do numbers always tell us what we want. I'm kind of a, in case you hadn't noticed, narrative type of person as opposed to a quantifiable type of person, and yet the state is living by those subjective measures right now.
We have that state accountability piece.
That's correct, we do. So what I'm going to do this evening is to use the word brief, but I think Mike knows that may not be true, right? But I'm going to go over just my goals for the program. Go over my goals for the program improvement. I have 3 goals, and then I have shared a goal with my new colleague, and NAP as a student learning goal, and so we will present that in tandem. Sort of dressed alike, but anyway. And so my program improvement goals, and you're going to see some, again, continuity. I thought Dr. Perone did a nice job this evening kind of explaining the work that we have done to develop our goals and how an umbrella and leading and vertical and horizontal, he mentioned all those key phrases. So I think you're going to see some similarities. So my goal number 1, which deals with the alignment of curriculum, and when you have a title like Director of Curriculum and Grants Management, you better be doing something in curriculum. So by June of 2013, there will be a draft aligned curriculum document in English Language Arts and Mathematics in grades K through 10 as specified in the district strategic plan, student achievement number 1. I put the last part in there because I wanted to show the connection to our district strategic plan. That's important to me to show that alignment. I did specify specifically for you folks what I meant by a draft aligned curriculum document to make an assumption that we would have a curriculum aligned document by June of 2013 would be a pretty phenomenal task. We are looking at grades K through 10 because we have small departments at the high school to try to get grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 done again in 1 year was a pretty phenomenal task with the number of staff members in a given department in ELA or math. So again, you see the alignment of that. What I'm doing right now is working with the principals. I think you're going to see a similar goal probably and have seen at the other presentations in curriculum. And so basically I'm just acting as the overseer of sorts for this project, including the work we did this summer. So I'll go through, as Vito did, I'll go through my 3 and then entertain any questions on that before we do the student learning goal. My second program improvement goal is on unit and lesson planning. It's somewhat of a derivative of the alignment of the curriculum. By February of 2013, we will have a completed draft of training documents regarding unit and lesson planning components that are aligned with the state educator evaluation system as specified in the district strategic plan, Educator Excellence number 1. So we do talk about it in our strategic plan. The state is pretty clear in their educator evaluation system about teacher planning and the importance of teacher planning. We do not currently have a system-wide approach to planning. That doesn't mean that our teachers aren't planning. It just means that we don't have a system-wide approach to it at this point. And so I am currently working on research in this area, as well as the fact of talking to colleagues, including some colleagues within the district here, to put together some draft documents that I will share with the superintendent, and then eventually come up with a set of components, good planning components, that we would expect with teachers and that would be in alignment when supervisors are evaluating a teacher, so that a teacher can showcase these points of evidence, these components of planning to their supervisor. And so that we, as we create our curriculum documents, and we have the what we call scope and sequence of the curriculum, that teachers are then able to take that scope and sequence and develop good unit and lesson plans that will be coherent.
And Shirley, I think it's an important point to make that, you know, our teachers clearly have been doing planning
Absolutely.
all along. But what we are needing to do now is to align those expectations with the evaluation rubric so that teachers understand what the expectations are, so that we all have a common understanding of it during this evaluation process.
And there's new language. There's new language that has come out. We talk now in mathematics about the mathematical practices. That was not something that was around a couple of years ago. So when I talk about the fact of having a system-wide approach, we don't currently have that included system-wide in our planning. Doesn't mean, again, that teachers aren't doing it, but we need to be more explicit about it now with this new language, just as we do around some of the literacy components, including informational text. That's a newer component to ELA, for example. Good point. So, program improvement number 3 is on the assessment system. You just heard Dr. Perone speak about that as well. Clearly, the assessment system is a critical component when we talk about curriculum, instruction, and assessment. By June of 2013, develop an action plan for the implementation of a district-wide assessment system as specified in the district strategic plan, Educator Excellence Number 2. So again, what targeting here is what kind of district-wide assessment system can we have that will be horizontal as well as vertical within the district, not just in the areas of mathematics and ELA, which would certainly be target areas, but across the board. And we here, in fact, I just was speaking with Allison Rubello at the middle school today, who was talking about working with her staff right now in terms of mid-year assessments that will be common within their particular grade levels. This is the kind of assessment system that we want to go to, and we may possibly be entertaining, I'm sure funded through grants, some kind of an assessment system that we can use within the district that will be formative in the sense of giving us data that will help us know the students who are at risk before we take that one-time test in MCAS. So if we can have other assessment systems in place, not just teacher-made, but something else that would give us more data about how students are performing, so that we can have those interventions that we're still trying to pay for in some fashion, but so we can have more ready access to providing supports to students when they need them along the way. So those are the 3 program improvement goals, and I will certainly entertain some questions right now regarding that.
Questions, folks?
I don't dare.
Oh, go for it,
Go
Nancy.
for it.
Go for it. Absolutely.
I'm a teacher,
You bet.
and as a teacher in our system, at some point, I could be or might volunteer, or maybe I'll be called to come to the school committee. And I will be able to come forward and say, these are our system-wide planning goals. I understand them. This is what I do. This is how I plan my class, because I'm following the system-wide planning
Components.
thank you.
Correct.
So our teachers will be able to answer that.
I would certainly hope so. That would be my goal.
Okay. I'll probably be fired.
Well, I think one of the things, Nancy, that came out in a conversation with the superintendent regarding these to make sure that my vision of these goals and where I'm heading with them that we're in alignment. And I said, are you envisioning components of planning or a template?
Okay, that's 2 different things.
Thank you. They are. And so the superintendent thankfully said, I would have gone along with her anyway, but
No, you
She-
would have been
no.
looking for a job elsewhere probably if I'd given the other answer.
is components.
Components. All
Yeah.
right, I'm
Okay.
gonna,
Because
you're
there are,
gonna keep
and
me
yet
on
at the
then.
same time, there are people who will want and ask for, and we will provide a template, because some people want that. But the expectation will be the components
all
of planning.
right.
Okay.
I think my job is safe.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
What's the difference?
The difference is that I might say that I want to have the learning objectives as a component. I might say that one component is that I want you to talk about the resources that you're going to use in a unit. I want you to talk about assessments that you're going to use in the unit. These are components.
Gotcha.
A template would be possibly little boxes, and I say put this first, this second, this third, and whatever, and type it into a box.
One-dimensional
Yeah.
versus.
And some, exactly. And some people say, we did curriculum work this summer as a good example. And I had teachers do some beginning. I had very little time to even talk to them ahead of time. I sent them out to get us a jump start in some fashion. And I gave them a template But I said to them when I gave it to them, these are the components. I'm giving you a template. If you choose to move this here or move that there or whatever, the main thing is these are the components I need to have in the beginning. So one colleague at the middle school that was working on it said, I don't like boxes and tables, okay, and gave me the work back in a narrative form. But the title of each section of that narrative fit the components I had talked about.
Right. All right, I applaud you.
And I'm very glad that you're not getting fired.
I am too.
Yeah. Any other questions on the program improvement?
Student learning goal?
Student learning goal. I ask my colleague to join me at this time. So I'm going to share with you the goal, and Anne's going to talk briefly about the key actions of this goal, and I'm going to talk very briefly about the benchmarks of the goal. But basically working jointly together as a team, by September of 2013, our MCAS CPI, Composite Performance Index, in mathematics will be increased by at least 10% for the students with disabilities subgroup at all tested grade levels. Okay.
My turn.
Your turn.
All right, I'm the detail lady this time. So our first key action is really going to be meeting with the administrators at each building level to go over all of the different aspects of the MCAS data, talking about what students fell into what categories, how we could possibly look at moving those students up, looking at an item analysis to determine what types of problems our students were doing well in, what types of student problems our students were not doing well in, and to really get down to the nitty-gritty so we can say, okay, this is where we need to target interventions. The Special Education Director, me, will ensure that IEP goals and benchmarks and specially designed instruction and accommodations address math curriculum content and learning skills. To be quite honest, this is the bulk of my work for the year across the curriculum, is to help special education teachers and general education teachers take our assessment information and not only teach children content in a different way, but really work at teaching students how to be effective learners, how to take their strengths, to compensate their weaknesses, and how to use accommodations available to them so that they can access the curriculum. Based on accumulated data, current practices, and site input, make recommendations for newer revised interventions. And that's basically, after we've looked at all the data, what do we need to do differently to help our students achieve? Provide professional development regarding differentiation of instruction and/or learning strategies in mathematics for meeting the needs of high-needs students. And that really is, how do we teach our students not only information, but how to be learners? And provide district-wide support for implementation of a system of using formative and summative assessments to drive instruction and monitor student progress. And in many ways, that last one should be the first one, because it's only through especially formative assessment on discrete content areas and skills that we're going to know what our students need remediation in, where our students have just the beginnings of the skills, and which of our students we really can be challenged with some independent work and some extension work.
All right.
So basically, in the area of the benchmarks, it just tells how are we going to know along the way that we've done what we've said we were going to do. And as you can see noted there, we're going to keep notes from any meetings that we have. We're going to give reports to the superintendent periodically. We're going to keep records of professional development that we provide along the way for staff, and of course, again, any detailed reports on that formative and summative assessment. And I will share with you briefly that some of this, even though we're still in the process of meeting with the site administrators, that we've been meeting and talking about data now for months. You know, as soon as the data came out, we've been talking about it. And so we don't necessarily always have the luxury of waiting to do all of this processing before we get into interventions. And so just as an example, in the area of mathematics, some of the students, by the way, who are special needs students, but not all of them, we have an intervention going on right now, paid for with some grant-funded resources, where we have brought a tutor. A lot of our support in previous years has been after school. And what we find, especially with the high school students, is they don't stay after school. They've got jobs and things. So we're providing an intervention right now where I went through the data, found the students that needed to have support because they're going to take the MCAS in mathematics again in November 1st and 2nd. It's called a retest. They've already failed once. And we're currently right now providing support within the school day, 2 days a week, for students who are this small cohort of students. And we have Ann Vanderberg, retired teacher in mathematics, working with these students in small groups, preparing them for the November 1st and 2nd retest. And you know, I've been checking regularly on that intervention and how it's working. And from what I've heard from the teacher, from Kathy Tonelli, who oversees some of the special needs students, as well as from administration at the high school, is that the students are dedicated and committed to the work that they're doing with Ann. They know why Ann is there. They know she's there to help them, and they're working very hard. That's the kind of intervention we want to do. That's the kind of intervention, if we get more resources, we can do on a regular basis. And then we know the numbers are going to turn.
Do you want me to emphasize that point one more time for the audience at home?
I'd love to, yeah.
Now, you know, bringing someone in to do that kind of support work, and this is a limited, targeted, right? Ann comes in and works in a specific time frame with a specific subset of students on a task. It's a very effective application of resources, and we expect it's going to be yet another example of where we'll see measurable results,
right,
since we have to play the data game.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also about students, and
Yes.
it's about student progress and supporting our students to be the best they can be, and to be ready, college and career ready, when they leave our high school.
And they're a captive audience during the day. After school, we're really, you know, we're competing with an awful lot of things in after school for the students to come and get that support. But if students are committed and want to learn, we want to provide every opportunity for them to do so. And we do have limited resources that we're doing it with grant funds, that we're being very creative with how we're using the monies. But those monies are also doing, and I don't mean to play a violin here, but it goes to the fact that if we want to see things improve, we have to have the resources to do these interventions.
So if this initiative this fall that you've outlined here with
Yes,
works,
yes,
then it becomes a model where that same sort of service could be provided for students earlier in the process coming along, right?
I was already at the high school today, and one portion of my day today was to work with the guidance personnel up there. I already pulled out the students who failed 8th grade mathematics. I already found, and that are currently now 10th graders. They'll be taking MCAS for the first time. There's a list of probably 20 students that we're targeting. I've now researched their background of what they've done in the last year and a half, okay, in terms of their mathematics work. And we've already slated what they're taking second semester and where we can pull them out of to do interventions with them second semester. So we're already heading in that direction.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Shirley? Okay, then we'll have Ann Knapp, our Special Education Director, do her program improvement goals.
Thank you, Shirley.
I actually want to start with Goal 2 because it piggybacks really nicely onto what Shirley was just talking about. And Goal 2 talks about increasing by 15% the service delivered to students in the inclusion model. And why I want to talk about that first is the inclusion model by research is the model where you see the greatest growth in students who have special needs, because it is tied directly to the content that is being taught in the general education program. And it allows not only for the resources of the special education teacher and the special education paraprofessional to be shared with students who are on IEPs, but because of the collaborative nature of it, it allows that expertise to be used in an informal way for students who are not necessarily special education, but are in that at-risk category. And it provides a basis for a broad range of Tier 1 and 2 interventions before we get to Tier 3. It works. It is the research-based model. It is where you see the most growth. However, you need to have a district that is able to commit resources of staffing to this model. And right now, as we sit down and we think about increasing B-grid services, with the amount of staff we have, it's an incredible stretch to even begin to think about a real inclusion model, which in the long run is a savings not only to the district because you get fewer special education referrals, but it also increases achievement across the board.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, and forgive me for interrupting, but I want to seize on this, the resources that we have currently don't allow us to use best practice.
Right.
The best practice model is the inclusion model. That's what the scientific research supports. This works best for our young people. We don't have the resources to use that. We have resources enough to do something for these folks, but what we're doing for these folks is not the best practice. It's not the most effective way of improving their learning and getting them on track to being successful in the broader strategic vision of the school.
And ultimately, it's a savings to the district in the long run. The $27,000 tuition just came up. We're not going to see any circuit breaker money for that because it doesn't meet the base. So we're going to have that whole tuition taken out of our special education budget. When you have strong inclusion programs, you have fewer students who are going to be going out of district because you're not only going to be providing them with the education they need in the general education classroom, but for those students who have more severe needs, you're going to be able to target more specialized interventions in a much more, and the word better way. Efficient, that was the word, and a much more efficient way.
It's not just a preference where you and Shirley are sitting down in a room saying, well, we could have this, do you want to have a chocolate donut today or a glazed donut? There's evidence to say this is the right way to do it.
Not only is there evidence, but it is basically the expectation of the state. It is one of the areas that next year DESE's going to be coming in, and they're going to be looking at our programs. And they're going to have an expectation that we have a full range of service options open to our children, and that includes inclusion.
So, okay, so now after all that, so do you think, and I know it's in your action steps, but can you realistically increase by 15% this with what you have now for personnel?
Given, I think that there's another piece to this that is not only the staffing, but it's an educational growth for the staff. We have, and I can't give you the exact numbers, but it's probably a 5-to-1 or higher ratio of services being provided pull out rather than push in. 15% is a really small change that is doable.
And that gets back to our strategic plan, the initiative about reallocation of resources.
Right, which is my third goal. So, so that's why the 15% is a very doable number. So let me go back now to goal 1. And goal 1 actually has to do with assessment and individual education plans. I have to say that everyone has been so wonderful, me as the new person, coming in and telling me all of the work that's gone on before me with the data and sharing the data and helping me work through all of the data. It's been wonderful. I've been able to meet also with central office staff, building administration staff. I have monthly meetings with all of the specialists that I supervise. They've brought me a tremendous amount of information. So that what I've been able to do is, my goal is to increase achievement as reflected by at least a 10% increase in the Mathematics Composite Performance Index for students with disability subgroup at all tested grade levels, which is exactly our student learning goal. And so what I've been able to do under the focus of special education is to sit down and review with the special ed coordinators, the speech and language therapists, the psychologists, the ELL teachers, and some of the special education teachers exactly what we're already doing for assessments and what assessments we have available in the district. The next step was to sit down with the psychologist and the coordinators and the speech and language therapists and to come up with a format for writing assessments down so that each and every assessment has a clear description of a child's strengths, a child's weaknesses, and recommendations to teachers to help those students remediate their weaknesses and use their strengths. I am constantly reviewing individual education plans to make sure that they are written measurably, that they address not only content areas, but they also address skills that students need to become more independent learners. I think people are getting tired of my saying, this is not measurable, please make it measurable, and here's an example. The latest thing I've told them is I expect an almost 1-to-1 ratio between content objectives and learning skills objectives. So if you want a child to use a graphic organizer to write an essay, there better be an objective somewhere in their history where people have taught them how to use a graphic organizer. Mm-hmm. And to create an action plan to address IEP areas which do not directly address student achievement. And this is really talking about the social emotional goals, making sure that we're covering all of the bullying regulations, so that those softer areas are also addressed, and are also addressed based on assessment, softer assessments, and are also addressed measurably. So the benchmarks are basically to report on how we're getting on in all of these areas. And finally, after we figured out what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where we're doing it, we sit down and we talk about how we assure that each location has enough staff to provide the services. I will tell you now, I have gone through special education staff in the high school, the middle school, and one of the elementary schools. And in none of those schools are there enough special education full-time equivalent teachers to provide the services that we should be providing. It's that simple.
So that means then, if we can't provide the support through a trained special education educator, it increases the likelihood that that child will end up in an expensive, out of district placement. It increases. It doesn't mean absolutely, but it increases the likelihood that that can happen.
And the other part of that is for those children who don't end up out of district is they end up being pulled out into substantially separate programs, which further dilutes the teaching staff that's available for inclusion. It's a within the district, so it's a vicious
both
cycle.
an educationally and financially vicious cycle.
Yeah.
I think again, this is really important. I don't know if anybody's listening. I'm hoping that some of this will get replayed, but I think it's important for people to say, well, we save the money here by, quote, operate within our means. What it means, though, is we have to adopt practices that only increase the likelihood that the expenses related to trying to do it in the future are greater.
Right.
And we all know, so it's a rational step down an irrational path. To not spend more money on these services when we first identify the students as they're moving up through the grades, it may be rational at any given moment, given the limited amount of resources we have, but the irrational outcome is we end up paying more later,
Right.
both in terms of the quality of the educational experience that they have and the cost to the district.
And also by not making sure that we have the staff to do the formative and the summative assessments and to really flood inclusion at the younger grades where we really concentrate on both content and teaching learning skills. We increase the number of students we have into referral for special education. When you have a really solid, inclusive, data-driven, assessment-driven, differentiated program starting at the very beginning, you have a lower rate of referral. And our referral rate and our special education rate is higher than the Commonwealth's. That goes down when you're able to provide the services in an inclusive model. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John Schacht.
Your time's all used up.
Now you gotta-
I won't ask you any questions, John.
I'm not making that promise.
John's going to do the report on technology.
Mine are a little bit different, obviously, than some of the other ones that have been presented out there. And I'll go through the goals first of all. Goal number one was basically develop a training schedule for the staff at Easthampton High School and the use of new technologies related to the new high school by the end of this particular year. As the high school is going to transcend itself from the old building into the new building and the type of technologies they will have in the new facility, they will need to have some sort of a program in place that I can give them at least a basic understanding of the types of tools that they will have when they actually physically move into the building in April of 2013. It is going to be a challenge just for the fact that they are teaching full-time and trying to make out a schedule with the high school, with Dr. Perrone, and also the contractors up there to figure out how we are going to get that particular staff over there to learn the types of things that they will have available to them in that new building, and so that they can use it at least on a limited basis once they get in there in April of next year itself. Goal number two is basically develop and implement an online system for implementation of the Mass Educator Evaluation System. This actually is, I started this particular process in August. As we start with the evaluation process itself out there, we are also required to collect a lot of data from each of the staff members itself. There are a lot of tools online that are required by DESE. There are a lot of forms online that we need to comply with. And one of the things we started to look at is how can we get those particular tools into some sort of a format and also online so that we can actually collect the data as we move through and the administrators evaluate the teachers during the start of this year itself. I started looking out there at various different types of programs. My initial phase was actually start to write some different types of programs that would help the district. And as we started to look out there and started to evaluate different programs from within the state and also external to the state that does evaluation of teachers, we started to narrow it down, and there were some criteria that I was looking at in the evaluation process. And come to find out that there was a implementation program last year on the evaluation system. And going across the state and talking with my fellow colleagues out there, one of the districts out there has developed a tool that we are seriously looking at to do the evaluation process. A lot of the tools that I looked at so far, basically we had to do a lot of implementation, a lot of tweaking, and a lot of pulling in of data, mostly the statistical data and the evaluation forms from the states. This particular tool that we are looking at was developed with one of the districts out there, Wachusett Regional High School, and another technology company itself. And it has some very promising aspects to it. It is very easy to use, and it is something that is very portable in that we can collect the data, archive the data, and it will give us a lot of statistical information going out of the program itself.
And fortunately, if I could just add on to that, John, we also clearly were looking for something that was very inexpensive, because there's a cost of all of these. And the fortunate piece was that I went to the collaborative steering committee meeting on Friday, and Damon Douglas, one of the collaborative members, did a presentation on exactly this online system that we were looking at, that John had determined was the best system for us. And so they were proposing to us as superintendents that if we were interested, they would see if we could do a joint deal, and so we would all get it at a lower cost. So it looks now, we're going to go to a presentation in Hadley on it. One of the other superintendents has agreed to have the presentation at her district. And it looks like we'll go forward and get a price break on the implementation of this system, which will be wonderful for us. So.
And just add one other thing to Nancy, what Nancy just said is we also, one of the criteria I was also looking at is in collecting the data and analyzing the data, I also have to look on the back end of there, because I also have to have all the data coded, because all the data that we will be doing in the evaluation process, also I have to submit to the state this year to them on the teacher evaluation process itself.
Can I just ask one more question about that? And I'm just more curious. I mean, so you have an October 30th deadline goal on here. Are you ready for this by next week?
I think we're pretty close. I think in regards to looking at the different tools that have been out there, looking at the different evaluation systems, and looking at this particular one, which is called Teach Point, and one of the criteria we are actually looking at is the administrators within the district. They have to start the process of the evaluation. It's going to be a daunting task for them. They're collecting data already and trying to get this data into some sort of a electronic format is, I think it's high priority out there for them, so that they don't feel that they're overly burdened in that respect itself out there. And I think we'll come darn close, I think, to the October 30th deadline.
We will choose a program by then. The implementation will take longer. But, you know, when John first wrote these goals, which was a while ago, he was looking at perhaps having to do something internally. And clearly we wanted to be ambitious about it. But, you know, the goals, just like we talked about my goals with you, you know, when we do mid-cycle review, we'll check on progress of all of these and tweak them as we need to. Clearly, this one's going to need to be tweaked some already.
Just a question. Just to be clear, this online system is a requirement for the district?
No, it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement from the state.
But the management of it, of this educator evaluation system is pretty overwhelming. And the collection of the data from all of those teachers, the collection of the observation notes, and then the ability to transfer it to the state is just really more than we can do without some system to help us in this district that we have, where we don't have a lot of personnel. I mean, we have, you know, one administrator at Center Pepin responsible for evaluating 400 teachers. So we have to provide the support that we can.
400 students.
400, sorry, 400 students, not 400 teachers, sorry. Of 400 students and approximately, I think he has 30-some teachers to evaluate. So we need to support our administrators in being able to do this. And so that's why we began to look into it. The state has said to us that they will also try to develop and support a system, but that won't happen for a while. So we think that this collaboration with the collaborative is going to work well for us. And you had another one?
The third goal basically is staff will have completed teacher technology survey for state technology plan implementation report. Basically, on a yearly type basis, I do have a major report that I do file to the state in regards to the readiness of the staff and the readiness of the students in regards to 21st century skills, and looking at collecting a lot of data through a survey form to collect that data and share that data with you at a future point itself. And the student learning goal out there that I have on here was launch a web-based power school support and information site for parents, students, and staff. And this is sort of centered basically around two different aspects of it. Is we are looking at implementing, we do have the parent portal, and also we do report cards both at the high school and both at the middle school online through our SIS system, or student information system. I am in the process of talking with the administrators at the elementary schools, looking at developing a standards-based report card system that we can put online, and also look at opening the parent portal up for those particular parents and children at the elementary level itself, so that parents can get more information and be a little bit more informed with all the students they have throughout the district itself. And the other part of that also is putting some more information online for parents to also help them through accessing the parent portal, and also some of the questions they may have coming up with accessing and looking at some of the statistical data within the parent portal itself. And actually, one of the things I just actually implemented or put online today, and those of you that do have used the parent portal out there, when you do go in today, you'll see a second little bar down at the bottom of the login screen. For those of you that have multiple students in the district itself, there is a bar down at the bottom where you can actually put some information, and it will actually allow you to access both child with one login and one username. So
Thank
you
you.
can take a look at that. Any questions?
I just wish the people throughout the whole community could hear the reports tonight. I don't know how many people are going to be watching this, but I just think it makes such a huge difference to hear what all is expected of our staff and what of the resources that we have in the school system.
Thank you.
I applaud you.
Thank you.
And that was true at the
John,
previous
it almost
meeting.
seems like all your
Presentation that
goals are
Shirley
gonna be
gave
done
was
by December
awesome.
30th. What are you gonna do the
Yeah.
second half?
We'll find something for you.
Yeah, I think we'll keep him busy.
We got one here.
People think they're still using stars.
All right, we're ready for matters for action unless there's something else. Okay,
All right.
you're the boss.
Motion to approve the minutes of the October 9th, 2012 school committee meeting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion, corrections? All in favor? Aye. You're going to abstain on that one.
I didn't say aye?
You said aye, but shouldn't you? I think you should abstain.
Oh,
You weren't there.
I should have said.
It's okay. Just, I'm working here. We
I
got it.
know. Thank you.
Okay, warrants and payrolls.
Yeah.
Move to approve the school payroll dated October 18th, 2012 in the amount of $450,311.99.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the school payroll dated 18 October 2012 in the amount of $450,311.99. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Can I say aye to that?
Yes.
Aye.
Sorry.
Move to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated October 18th, 2012, in the amount of $132,566.77.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated 18 October 2012 in the amount of $132,566.77. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. That's it? That's it, Sue? Are you sure? Okay. Then we'll entertain another.
Before we do, can I just ask one quick question about, at our request, we got the positive behavior program pamphlet.
Yes.
From the elementary school. Is that something that's going to become part of the, school handbook? Elementary school handbook?
I don't know that it necessarily would be part of the school handbook. The program itself, you mean?
Right, there was the expectations of that.
Some of them probably are incorporated already in the handbook. And, good question. I don't know whether they'll try to incorporate other ones into the handbook next year. That will be what the building administrators will do. As they work on it this year, they would make decisions about that before next year's handbook.
And the reason why I asked is that's a good tool for communicating those expectations to parents. In addition to a pamphlet.
Yes, certainly. And the website as well.
Yeah.
Your note reminded me, did we mention the next forum, school forum information date? So that folks, again, on the off chance that somebody's still listening, on Thursday, November 1st, thank you, at 7 o'clock at the Whitebrook
Middle School
Music Room, where we used to hold our meetings. That will be an opportunity for people in the community to ask questions related to question 4. So November 1st, Thursday, November 1st, the Whitebrook Middle School, 7 o'clock. It's an opportunity for people in the community to come and ask questions, get the information they need to be sure they vote. We don't meet again until after the election, correct? So Bailey, we should remind everybody to be sure to remember to go vote in the election?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Remember to vote. Thank you. One last motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.